I've never met a stranger, so to speak,
Love it.
And I know that you kind of have that same personality and
But
style.
have you ever given yourself a stranger?
Hey, let's try it real quick. Sit on that hand for 5 minutes, everybody. Yeah, was that recording?
That's got to be the cold open to the show.
You know you're getting locked up. You know you're a good human. You've just been in bondage to the addiction, and it drives you to do things you don't want to do. There's always going to be a lesson to learn, even if there's no blessing. Now I just want to help and give back, be a part of the solution as opposed to the problem. I'm going to interview professionals. I'm an ex-convict. It's a play on words. Let's have fun with this. This is the Pros and Cons Podcast.
You guys, welcome to Pros and Cons Podcast. We are here with Aaron Matthew Taylor. He is an American former professional football player, guard for 6 seasons in the NFL. He played college football, Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and was a 2-time All-American first-round pick in the 94 draft. He played professionally for both the Packers and San Diego Chargers, won the Super Bowl with the Packers. He works now as a college football analyst and a television sportscaster. He's also the founder of the Joe Moore Award for the most outstanding offensive line unit in college football, the only major college football award going out to a group versus an individual. Taylor's a speaker on teamwork, performance at summits, events, corporate retreats, universities. On top of that, he's a great husband and a father, man of his community, and a shining light to any place or any room he walks into. AT!
What's up?
All right, first and foremost.
First and foremost, we got to give a shout out to Wikipedia. That was a hell of an intro right there.
We do that every time. Thanks, Wikipedia. They do not sponsor this, by the way. So don't you guys, I wish they did. Hey, Wikipedia.
What's up, Wiki?
So, yeah, it makes my job easy. Some people, they just don't have it, but you do. Plus, it's cool to highlight a lot of that hard work that you do. But I usually kick this off. What'd you have for breakfast, or none at all?
Well, I worked out this morning from 5:45 to 7, so I didn't have anything before I trained. But afterwards, I had 2 chicken thighs and 30 almonds. How about that? Not what you were expecting, was it?
He counted those almonds. Okay, the
1,
dietitian
2,
said.
3. I guesstimate. Brother been a little hungry with the low carb, high protein.
I don't even know why that's funny, but it's great. It's like how you said, like a handful, or like I measured out a cup.
No, 30. 30.
Hey guys, it wasn't 2 chicken thighs. The dude was an lineman. He ate 2 chickens. Okay, no, I'm kidding.
That's what we call them in my house.
Anyways, dude, that's actually all BS aside. That's a lot of protein in there, good fatty acids, and all that stuff that we just like to stay. You know what I'm
Are
saying?
those things registered? In
No,
California?
not at all, dude. In fact, they've been downgraded over the years. So.
Yeah, no bump stocks allowed, bro.
So tell us, about all the accolades, where you grew up, and just a short little bio on the family stuff. And obviously, you were a big kid, so you knew you were going to play some kind of sport.
Wow, it's interesting, man. I didn't think I liked sports, but I had no idea that I would have the athletic career, that potential was even inside of me. I grew up in the Bay Area to a single-parent mom. She was a pediatric ICU nurse in Oakland.
Right on.
Children's
Shout out to
Hospital.
single parents.
What's up, Mama
Especially that. I mean, you got to raise him.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
I had a half stepsister.
Okay, sounds like my family.
Yeah,
Halves
we had
and
one
steps.
of those. Yeah.
Totally.
So it was a situation I did put her through a lot, and parents divorced at 2, pops left, physical sexual abuse at 5, 8 years old there was some abandonment. Then we moved every 2 years. I was always the new kid in school because we moved every 2 years. So new friends, new kids, new everything. And I was also biracial. So I was never black enough, never white enough. I was too black, I was too white. So
Right.
throughout my early childhood and really growing up in general, the messages I received from the world was that I wasn't good enough and that I didn't belong and that I wasn't safe in this world. So I did what I could to fit in, and the lowest common denominator of hanging out and being cool was smoking weed and drinking. So I did a lot of that.
Yeah,
At
man.
13, 14, got kicked out of the house, and then kind of had one of those God moments of clarity when I named playing professional football, which was ridiculous. It's like climbing Mount Everest and rollerblades or something. It was just like so far-fetched.
So sad.
But once I named it, the invisible door started to open, and that's really when the harder I worked, the better I got. Everybody worked hard, but they got this much better, and I got a lot better. And that kind of theme just carried on, and ended up getting a scholarship to Notre Dame. You know, was a 2-time unanimous All-American, was the last one until this last year. There was another cat that just broke it, but had a really storied career and ended up being a College Football Hall of Famer, first-round draft pick. But where I've ended up is certainly not where I started out, and I think that's kind of been the theme of my life, is that untapped potential and what it is we got to do to go through the crucible to get there.
Yeah. You know, I think that's a great example to a lot of these youngsters that hopefully listen to this, and any listener, you know, that as long as you trust in whatever's speaking to your heart, I might call it God, Jesus, you might call it the universe, Allah. It doesn't really matter. What matters is you listen to that internal voice that is leading you in a right direction, you know, because there's that other internal voice I know that I've had where you don't deserve it, you're a piece of shit, and
Take another hit.
yeah,
One more line won't hurt.
yep, you know, just stay right here and melt away and die, you know. So to have those, and dude, like you said, man, I know for a fact, and not personally, but because I know people like you that have played at the elite level, that is half of a 1 percentile, maybe even less. I don't know what of kids that might think that in Pop Warner, and then, dude, even to get to the NCAA standard,
Yeah.
you know, let alone pro, and then to win the big one too, which is crazy. In high school, at what point, or was it right away your freshman year where you started getting like touted for? Were you always like big kid lineman done?
Always a big kid. We played backyard football, tackle football on the street. My nickname was Fridge after Refrigerator Perry, the 19
Legend.
what was that? The '85 Bears and
Yep.
that great defense that they had in the Super Bowl shuffle. So I was Fridge, but that's it. I never worked out. I never exercised. I didn't have any work ethic. So my freshman and sophomore year, I was a DNF student, and I was smoking a lot of weed and drinking every day. My mom was working nights, which created a lot of opportunity for me to get in trouble. And as I said earlier, I got kicked out of the house sometime my sophomore year. And in that discussion, we kind of figured out, when my mom asked me basically, what is it you want to do? And I was like, well, I want to be a pro football player. She's like, well, how do you do that? I was like, oh, you just go to college, they draft you. It's like, oh, you just go to college and they draft you. Does everybody get drafted? No, just kind of the better people. And she said, well, when I was in college, you had to have good grades. Do you have to have good grades in college? I was like, yeah, I think it's a 2.0, kind of like it is in high school to be eligible. And I was like, oh, okay, I think that makes sense. Well, how do you get to college? It's like, well, you play high school football and they just give you a scholarship. Oh, they just give you a scholarship. Yeah. Does everybody get a scholarship? No. How many people? Well, not many. Da-da-da-da-da. Are grades important? I said, yeah, you got to have a 2.0. And this time I was like a .02 was my GPA.
Yeah,
so
I hear you on that one.
she was walking me back, and that in that conversation, she got to the line that I'll never forget. She said, every time you cut school, every time you cut class, every time you smoke weed, every time you run in the streets, what you're really saying is you don't want to be a professional football player. Isn't that right? And it was like, clunk. And that was the first time, Brandon, that I made the connection between my choices, my actions, and my consequences. That what I was doing in that moment would directly affect who and what I would later become. And I never stopped to really think about that, but in that moment it clicked. And that's when, as I said, like the invisible doors started to open. That night on TV, there was this television segment about this high school across the bay called De La Salle that had this 44-game win streak. And the coach was on, and he was being interviewed about how his players aren't it. They're part of it. And every player that comes here understands that there's a higher standard and da-da-da-da-da and culture. And I was like, see, Mom, that's the sort of place that, you know, takes football seriously, not like this school that I'm at here and da-da-da-da-da. And little did I know, and unbeknownst to me, she had reached out to that school. We filed for and applied and were granted financial aid. I was smart enough kid, even though I didn't apply myself, to be able to pass the entrance exam. And in 2 years, I went from being a DNF student, getting kicked out of the house, to having a full ride to any school in the country I wanted to, and I chose Notre Dame.
Dang, man, that's so cool. Yeah, because I mean, to this day, and we know, where I met you at NACOA, we work with so many high school athletes, and we're in the know, and a lot of our coaches also coach teams, high school teams. So De La Salle's been in that conversation for a long time as far as football goes, but to be able to like go from your freshman, sophomore year, we're like, okay, this is cool. Yeah, okay, I could do this, but, I'm still going to go screw off and X, Y, and Z to like go, holy cow, now I'm on the camp. Was it your junior, senior year that you made it over there?
Yeah. So I finished my high school career at De La Salle, my junior and senior year. And after my junior year, I was a big kid. I was 6'4". I've been 6'4" since I've been 14 years old, and I'm 52 now. So I was a quick grower, not a shower. And after that season, my coach brought me in and said, hey, you got some attention from some of these coaches, but they want to see if your weight's going to be a problem. You're this big, soft kid that leans on people and can run a little bit, but they're telling us that if you could lose a little bit of weight, that you might have an opportunity to do a lot of things in this sport that you might not thought you could do. Like what? Like go to college for free. Oh, okay. So we used the most innovative weight management system at the time, which was Weight Watchers, and went and bought a bunch of, frozen lean cuisine dinners and threw those suckers in the microwave, and I ate a lot of pickles and mustard that summer. But I was 6'4", 255, running 6-minute miles, dude.
Damn.
I was jacked and in shape, and that was the natural athletic ability that God gave me. Like you said, Allah, a cabbage, whatever you want to call it. There were things that I was born with that were inside of me that I didn't do anything to ask for, I didn't deserve. I just had them. But the moment that I applied myself, it took off. And I had to get in the right environment. I had to get out of my own way. I had to be able to be supported. I had to have that family support with my mom, who was willing to move us across town. And when I got there that summer, man, I don't know if I had ever worked as hard as I had worked that summer going into that first season. And then on my senior year, which was, just off the charts, I ended up being on the first USA Today All-American team. But it's a story I love to share because we all know how my story ends, but we don't know how it started. And after that first practice, my junior year at De La Salle, like working out all summer but not putting pads on, after that first padded practice, woke up, 7 o'clock, mom's dropped me off for 2-a-days. And, I come home later that evening, and she goes, hey, how'd practice go? And I just slammed the door, and I was crying, and I walked into my room. And she's like, oh, my gosh, what's going on? So she kind of let me calm down, knocks on the door. She's like, what's wrong? I was like, Mom, I don't know if I could do this. They were yelling at me. If the play was going left, I went right. If the play was going right, I went left. And I didn't know what I was doing. And I'm so sorry that we moved here. I'm not going to be able to do this. And I just was like raw, man. And in her wisdom, she just kind of let me get it all out. And she said, Aaron, I don't care if you play football or not. She said, but you got to make a decision if what you want is worth the price that you may have to pay for it. She said, you got to figure out if you're going to let those coaches be right or if you're going to follow your dream. Doesn't make a difference to me. But in the morning, if you wake up, I'll have your breakfast for you. And if you don't, I won't say a word. But you got a decision to make. Click, and shut the door. And brother, if you could have seen me sitting on the edge of that bed that night, I did not sleep a lick because I was sitting there in my head thinking about how am I going to go through it. There's no way I could do that again. What's it going to mean? Da, 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 da. And somehow, some way, I got up that next morning. I went to practice, and I got my ass chewed again. But I made a block. And I went back in the afternoon. I got my ass chewed again, but I made a couple more blocks. And then I kept going back day after day and kept making more blocks. And as it turns out, I was pretty damn good at football. I just didn't know it yet. And I love sharing that story because so many of us have an opportunity, a future, potential, riches, dreams, goals, a life that we couldn't imagine. but we just have to be willing to step into the fear, to be able to risk losing everything to get that salvation or to get that gold or get that opportunity that we want. And somebody asked, the best way that I've been able to sum it up, somebody asked me once, you've worked out with one of my sons, not both of them, but Grayson, the middle boy, if there's one piece of advice I could give him, what would it be? And that's that the gold in our lives lies just beyond where we're afraid or unwilling to go. And the way that we mine that gold is with courage, willingness, and acceptance. And if we can manage to maintain those three things with curiosity and with a willingness to put in the effort, the world's our oyster, man. There's no stopping anybody on the planet if we're willing to do that.
Dang. Thank you, guys. This concludes our episode with Aaron Taylor. Dude, you know what? And I agree. And I posted about this a few days ago. There's a couple ideologies of, we hear this a lot with shut my phone up. Sorry, everybody.
That's really your ringer right there?
That's just my you got a text coming in.
We'll talk about that at commercial.
Yeah. Gosh, dude, it just ruined. So I was saying, in these realms, like you were saying, like you had a choice to make that night. Your mom laid it all out for you on an emotional, mental playing field that you could go play on in your mind to get up the next day and go, okay, I'm going to go give this another shot. And you made that one block, right? And I think that's a metaphor for life. If you have a goal and you have a dream, and as cliche as that is, people say it all the time. We all have those. The greatness is what you said. It's the vein of gold that we all have. And the vein of gold is there for everybody. Yep. You got to be willing to freaking mine it. You got to go put in work, you know. And even in the realm of like trust fund babies that get lateraled, all this stuff, right? Like, that gold gets handed to you. You don't value it. But people that mine their own gold value that gold. And with value, you have an emotion and a mental fortitude that can be unshaken because you know what it's like to work for that. Yep. And all due respect to people that were born into that kind of scenario I was talking about. I'm not downgrading anybody. And even so, just being taught to value your own self and your own greatness and your own talents, regardless of if you have the backing of money or not, is a huge thing that goes on and permeates into the atmospheres that you step into, Aaron. I mean, from the day I met you, you know, and I was like, I'm really stoked because I grew up, you know, heartbroken Chargers fan, still am. But any guy that donned the bolt for me, I'm a fanboy, right? And I'm just like, respect, I don't care. Like we have coming in also is I forget Bob's last name, but dude, he won an AFL ring back in the Balboa Stadium days.
Wow.
And he's been working out there, and he's in his 60s, and I think he was a D-end or outside linebacker. But you know, amazing human. And I was like, I fanned out on him. And then there's another cat that signed up for a little bit, and I think he never left. His name's Travis LeBoy, was the linebacker. So for me, I get to like. For instance, I took the picture and I'm in a group text and hopefully the boys watch it. And I was like, damn, dude, look who's here. And they're like, what, dude, you got a cool job. And I'm like, I know. Thanks, guys. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
But no, AT, to get kind of circle back to that, man. I mean, you said it, and you're a prime example of not only your children, but also to so many others that you work with that you may be bequeathed talents. And let's put away like money to the side, right? Like your family's got money, because we see a lot of those kids. But if you don't value the dollar, or you don't value your talents, I don't care what background you come from, you're going to end up on the same block, just freaking broke, busted, disgusted, hopeless, all that shit. Yeah,
it's interesting, man. The mining of the gold, that's dirty, nasty, grimy work. The payoff is worth it, and sometimes you strike gold and pay dirt, and sometimes you don't. But you got to be willing to put the work in, and that's one of the big differences. And I think this isn't unique to our generation, but as each generation has gotten older, and it's interesting now because this is going to be the first one in history where the generation that's coming up behind us doesn't have it better than their parents. that things are turning, the economy and COVID and all these different things. So we're kind of in uncharted territory where the arc is going down. But at some point, because life was so hard, parents wanted a better life for their kids. And I don't know how this has happened, but at some point it seems like it's switched. And now parents want an easier life for their kids. And there's a really big difference between those two. And we see it with single sport club kids that play year round, that never struggle, that never face adversity, that never get cut, versus what we did playing at the Boys and Girls Club, or being an okay football player, a really good basketball player, and a terrible baseball player, but that's the sport we love the most, so we did all three. Like, we're not seeing the multi-sport kids that have different experiences of different success levels. It's like, I'm successful from the start. I'm on the A team. I'm traveling year round. I'm at all these different camps. My parents are paying all these specialized coaches. And what we're seeing on the college side, I'm a college football analyst, but also in the off season, I'm a mental health advocate, and I do a lot of stuff behind the scenes. These kids are melting. They don't have the resilience. They don't feel connected, and they don't have the fortitude and the experience and the belief to be able to deal with life on life's terms. So when they blow an ACL, they rupture a patella tendon, or they get cut, or they don't play as much as they want, or the season for the first time they're losing and are 500, they're wilting. So a big piece of what I appreciate about what you do in the martial arts and boxing world is being able to develop that resilience and that grit, where at the end of the day, when we're all sitting on the edges of our beds, there's that voice inside of us that may be faint but eventually rises up that I can do hard things. Mm-hmm. Hang in there. Find a way to do your job, to get up, to go to work no matter what. Yes, it sucks right now, but somehow, some way, things are going to get better. Hope is a belief that there are things I can do to improve my set of circumstances or my situation. And I that's like a muscle that we can develop, but we have to do it intentionally. And I know with as many of the young student athletes that you work with that do come from means, I mean, we didn't grow up, you did, because you grew up here in Carlsbad, but the set of circumstances, like the world isn't blue skies and palm trees and beach living. Even if you grow up here, that ain't what life is. So some of these kids, and I worry about it with my own, is will they have the grit that they're going to need when it's necessary to be able to push through, to have that moment and that interior voice that lets them know that they can do hard things, that they can be in the fire and rise up again. And that's your story. That's my story. And honestly, that's a story of everybody on the planet that's successful.
Yeah, man. I did a whole study about that word grit, and even through research of the most defining aspect of anybody that you can coin successful, could be a business builder, an entrepreneur, someone that became a doctor, pro athletes at the highest level. There was one common denominator that made them all successful, and that was grit. Mm-hmm. It wasn't IQ. It wasn't anything other than the fact they were able to persevere through times where, like, for instance, if you were very smart, well, when your friends made a left, one guy said this in an interview. He was a stock exchange business builder. He was like, dude, look at, man, when my friends made a left off the freeway to go to Jersey Shore and I made a right to go run my dad's liquor store, you have to have an emotional level of grit to not get the fear of missing out and to know that I'm in the long game.
Yeah.
Because now, well, ever since I call it a microwave theory or a microwave society, we want to put stuff in and then it's done in a minute.
That's right.
Right? And the shit does not work that way,
no.
Aaron, right? And you're a prime example. And even so, growing up in Carlsbad, right? Yeah, for sure. My dad was a furniture salesman, though. Yeah. And he married a mom who had 3 kids from her first marriage and then 1 bastard kid from a boyfriend. And then he came in, I was probably a year and a half, 2 years old. Don't remember anything else, but raised all of us. So men were built different back then. But he was also probably in the 1 or 2% of, he was in sales, right? But it was furniture. But he was able to raise us all in Carlsbad and raise 4 kids in essence that weren't his. But, you know, love transcends all of that. But case in point, again, I learned a lot from him. It was grit. It was like, dude, he drove to L.A. every day of the week.
Yeah.
In LA, regardless of traffic or not, you're looking at 2 hours,
Yeah.
4 hours a day on the road. And also statistically risking your life. I mean, freeway accidents, it is what it is. So grit was probably the common denominator. People are like, well, what is grit? It's just the ability to just go, dude, my teeth are knocked out. I got a punctured lung, but guess what? My heart's still beating.
That's it.
I think I can stand up. And if I can do all that, I can go ask for help, and I can take those next steps to climb this mountain again.
Yeah.
You know, and like the stuff you went through, no one was with you when you were a kid, confused in that room. I'm black, I'm white, I'm big. Nobody likes me. Maybe they like me. Maybe they don't. What am I going to do? You know, that's a freaking dark area, dude. And you're right. Here's another thing is I read a book, and the guy was an athlete psychologist in there was like, here's the problem of sports nowadays. Little Johnny or little Susie, proverbially speaking, go to these. They can play one sport year round now.
Yep.
He goes, the biggest thing and the most humble and most successful children and teens and young adults I see were kids that thrived in football but sucked at basketball.
Yeah.
But they both played sports. And in fact, a guy just came out. It was in Coastal News. It was a private travel ball baseball team. But you can't play on his team unless you play other sports. And I thought that was great after reading this book because you're right. And I know a kid that was fluffed all the way up as this next soccer phenom. Dude, now the kid's eggs are scrambled. He can still make it back into the full. But that's because when shit went sideways and hit the fan, you know, he didn't have that like, oh, I've played other sports.
Right.
I know I excel in soccer, but man, I was really shitty in baseball, you know, and that's the things that kids aren't being taught that are unteachable unless you go through that action, right? And that goes into, like for me, dude, math was my weakness. I was terrified. I was a scatterbrained, ADD, ADHD, whether you even believe in those acronyms or not, I flip-flop on that shit too. Because I also believe that if you take a kid, you know, boys are supposed to run and climb trees and be young. You force a kid to sit in a box for 8 hours a day. A lot of it, if you just give them the right pathway, they're going to flourish. They don't need Ritalin. They don't need Adderall. That's a whole other topic. Anyhow, but you take these kids, and when they can have that ability, and I know you do great with your kids, because look, you forged a path for your kids to go to a great school, but you teach them the value of their time, to value their things, to value the sports they can play and play at a high level. And they walk around different than a lot of, you know, I hate to pull the covers, but a lot of those kids at Cathedral, you know, they're already God's gift because they know within the scholastic region of San Diego, Cathedral Catholic
they have no fucking idea what it takes to be successful in life or appreciate the incredible set of circumstances that they've been handed. And I would throw my own children in that ring to a certain degree. We're all, as parents, coaching against that, right? We all want resilient kids. We all want them to appreciate what they have. But did we as kids? No, maybe not as much as we could have.
Yeah.
But that's why values are important. That's why having overt conversations about those things are important. But to your point about watching your dad and the work ethic that you learned from him and that grit, they learn way more by watching us than by listening to us. So they got to watch us work. They got to watch us be gritty in the obvious moments, but also the not so obvious moments. And I share wins and losses with my kids. I share the times where I haven't been mentally tough or at my best. I've talked to them about my recovery history in a general way that's age appropriate.
For sure.
So that they can understand that, yeah, you see how the story ends, but you got to understand what that story included, man. Like, there's been so many times where I'm at the edge thinking, how in the fuck am I going to get through this? How did I end back up here? How did this set of circumstances show up again? And how am I going to get up in the morning and get back to work and start to improve or change or fix or create efficiencies or to solve whatever set of circumstances it is? And sometimes the work's acceptance. Sometimes I got to accept that I ruptured my right patella tendon on day 4 in underwear in Green Bay. There's nothing I could do about that. But I could sit there and sulk, or I could get back to work. I was unique because I did both. Sat and I went and did PT every day and trained and got back because my dream was at stake. but I also drank 4 or 5 nights a week because there
Yeah.
was this darkness and this sadness that I self-medicated. I didn't know any other way to do, but I was scared shitless that my dream was over before it even started. So I had this angel and devil. I had the two wolves on my shoulders, and one was saying, hey, get back to work, do your thing. The other was like, man, you know, you're so close to it ending. What if they figure out you can't play? What if you're never the same? What if this thing doesn't work out? What? And start future tripping about everything that was going on. So all that is to say, in age-appropriate ways, like those are the dark moments that I think it's important to also help our children and people understand, so that they don't look at their TikTok feed or 240 characters or less with this microwave society with these instant results and expect that the world works that way, because it doesn't.
No, 100%. You know, another thing I want to share that I was doing a little research on, and let me look it up real quick, because that's a great one. So one thing I hate to hear, and I posted about it, is, but I don't have time to exercise, so I went and looked into it. But I don't have time to exercise, says the average unhealthy American. Do you know that the average social media hours per day is 2.5 hours, 3.2 hours of Netflix per day, 4.6 hours of smartphone per day, and 7.1 hours of screen time per day? You got time, just not the right priority. And that was my own little, you know, and again, we're all guilty, right? Kids even more so. They're not guilty because it's on the parents to also regulate that screen time. And I think it's a blessing and a curse. A lot of things are. But, you know, and that even correlates into the things we do to just become a better human. You know, a lot of that time, dudes, we got to plug into nature and put the phone down. Now, I kind of want to circle back, too, to the great moment where you get called into the draft. You're a freaking first-round pick. And you go to all places, the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. Just give us a little short blip on the radar of like, where was the draft? Was the draft always New York for a while, right?
Draft was in New York at that time, and it was the Green Bay Packers. You said Notre Dame, but yeah, it was coming out of Notre Dame.
I mean, yeah, my bad. When high school,
Yeah.
Let's go through that from high school,
Okay.
a little bit of Notre Dame time and all your accolades there, and then let's just go through that.
So going from De La Salle to Notre Dame. That was interesting. I think it was February 4th, 1989 was that first Wednesday in February that you could sign your letter of intent. And I went and got a suit. That was the first suit. I knew I'd need a suit in college, so my mom I think we spent $250.
That's right, Mom. Good job, Mom.
Shout out to JCPenney Big and Tall.
Dude, Bob Glade, my dad, dude.
it.
So my pops was 6'4", 250 plus pounds, and by the end, you know, he was so big they had to start cutting pieces off of him.
Yeah, that
He's
that
a joker
happens
too. Anyways, yeah, so you went and got your first suit.
And it was like, those were back in the days, was like they faxed a letter of intent. The school secretary gave it to me. I signed it. It was in the middle of class. Nobody was there except my mom. It literally was my signature and the date. I handed it back. She faxed it in, and I was on scholarship at Notre Dame. That was the whole deal. There wasn't a show. I didn't have hats in front of me, and for the next 3 years of my college career, I'm going to here. I didn't have any, reveals where the truck pulls away and I'm wearing this. It just was simple, bare bones. And the reason I ended up there as our athletic director is this guy, Tom Bowen at De La Salle, and Tom was a Notre Dame alum. And he just was in my ear chirping, oh, you got to take a trip. It's a special place like Catholic Disneyland. You'll love it, da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, I don't even know where the hell Notre Dame is. And I was thinking, isn't that the church in England, which is actually the church in France? I had the countries mixed up. Like, it was a disaster. So it ended up being the first official visit that I could take. And it was December 2nd, 1989. And it
Freezing
was,
your ass off.
Oh, brah. It was brutal. I had this big-ass Russian hat on, a Patagonia jacket. But I rode in the car from the airport with this cat, Dean Lytle. And Dean was a running back / DN from North Carolina. I never met a cat from North Carolina. He had this funny accent, but he was cool as hell. And we clicked and vibed right away, and he was, like, really curious about California. We met up with a couple other recruits, and then everybody just kind of clicked, and right away there was a different feeling about this group of people that had come together. And I think we ended up signing 20 of the 25 or 6 of the recruits that were on that weekend. And 3 Hall of Famers out of that career, like 4 college football Hall of Famers. Like, it was just a good group of dudes. And I think at the end of the day, looking back, there was something viscerally in my bones that told me that that was the place for me. And I think it was probably familiarity because of De La Salle.
Yeah, I
there
was
was
say De La Salle's a prep school.
lot of similarities between the two. Quality of people, a higher standard, that whole thing.
Yeah.
So that kicked off a 4-year career that went pretty well. We finished as high as second my senior year. Never below 15th, and average of being top 7 all 4 of those years. I think we lost 7 games in 4 years. We were incredibly talented, had a good run. And then 1994 draft, I got drafted to everybody's favorite destination vacation place, Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Gosh, you want to talk about cold too. But you know what? At that time, you're going, dude, I'm going to go block for Brett Favre. I mean, where was he at in his career as far as like time left? I mean, I know you guys won.
I think it was this.
You guys won the Super Bowl, but like, dude, you had to come on.
Yeah, that was his 2nd or 3rd season. And so my rookie year, I got hurt and missed that entire year. I was on IR. I came back and played my entire 2nd year, but ruptured my patella tendon in my left knee in the first round of the playoffs. But I did miss any time. That hit where I just rehabbed the whole offseason and started year 3, stayed healthy the whole season, and we went to and won our first Super Bowl. So the facts of the case are this. Aaron Taylor gets hurt. Green Bay doesn't go to the Super Bowl. Aaron Taylor stays healthy. We go to the Super Bowl and win it. I mean, that's facts, science. Brandon, that is science. You interpret
You guys
those
heard
facts
it here
however you'd
first.
like.
We got an NFL historical exclusive from Aaron Taylor, NFL retired guard.
Yes, sir.
That when he plays, Brett Favre goes to the Super Bowl. When
Just
he
saying.
doesn't play,
Just
they
saying.
go,
Just he
they go
doesn't.
back to freezing their butts
That's
off.
it. Then I leave. I stayed healthy the next year. We went and lost, unfortunately, here to Denver, and they didn't go back after that. So, yeah, there you have it.
Yeah,
but
hey.
I did get a chance to play with Brett and block for him for 2 of his MVP seasons, 2 of his 3 MVP seasons. So I had a front row seat to incredible throws and greatness. I got to practice against and watch Reggie White, one of the best defensive end, if not the best defensive player of all time in NFL history. That's debatable. But, like, I was in the locker room with dudes, man, and that was another culture that was really good. And interestingly, the culture – so I went from De La Salle to Notre Dame to Green Bay, all with fantastic cultures, and then came to the Chargers. And within 2 to 3 days of being a free agent and walking into that old facility on Arrow Drive, something wasn't right internally.
Yeah, let's tell a lot of my friends and people like the Chargers, you know, this obviously I'm born and raised here, a lot of Charger friends, a lot of friends that obviously stopped being Charger fans, understandably so. It's hard for me to get it out of my system. Everyone dealt with them leaving to LA differently. And I was still hurt and it still sucks, but you know, let people know that like the culture from a guy that lived it and worked in it from the front office desk all the way to your number one player and everything in between makes a difference.
Yeah, it's the difference.
So you walked into Arrow Drive.
And just the way the locker room was set up, every locker room that I was aware of and that I had been part of is a circle or a square. It's inward facing, if you will. And that's where the coach will stand. You can see defensive players. You can see everybody in every position. And the way the building was set up, our practice facility, it was like cubicles of 9 lockers. It'd be like 3, 3, and 3. There'd be drywall, and then like 3, 3, and 3, and then drywall. So you'd get all of the running backs and an offensive lineman in one. Then you get the rest of the offensive linemen and one of the wide receivers. And it was just herky-jerky like that all the way down.
Yeah, it kind of breaks up the continuity.
All of it.
And just to be able to communicate, throw shit at each other. Not that you didn't throw it over the partitions, but, you know, it makes sense.
So, I mean, there was the culture wasn't bad just because of the logistical layout, but that was
Right.
a very visible example of a lot of things organizationally, systemically, I think from an ownership standpoint, just the way they communicated. And I think an example of that is when the Chargers left San Diego and went to L.A. I mean, take a one-page ad out in the paper and say, thanks, San Diego, for all the great memories. You'll always be number one in my heart. You are the best fans ever, blah, blah, whatever.
Yeah, here's the 50 years. We're out of here.
Something.
50 years.
It's
or
interesting
even more.
because the same bitterness that fans feel when the franchise left here and went to Los Angeles is what we feel as players when we get cut. It's a business. It ain't personal, but it feels personal. And that's one of the hardest lessons we have to learn as athletes is that this whole, you're a Charger or a Bolt for life, or Notre Dame's a 40-year decision, not a 4-year decision. That's all bullshit. The bottom line is the bottom line in the NFL. It's a business. The only reason we're there is because they can't find somebody to do our job better than us for less money. And the second they can do that, they'll bring that person in, or they'll pay more money to get somebody that can produce more than we can. But it's not personal. So my heart goes out to the Charger fans because they get a little bit of taste of what it's like to have the rug ripped out under your feet. And again, it feels personal, even though it's not. It still sucks.
It does, man. Because I tell a lot of people, and I think that goes hand in hand with anybody that had a city that lost a team. I think the only one I can think of right now off the top is St. Louis with the Rams coming and going. But it wasn't even so much about the Chargers per se. It was also what brought your family together. Hey, man, even if you didn't like watching the game, it's like, hey, we're going over to Uncle So-and-so's, the game's on, but we're going to go play two-hand touch at halftime or during the game, whether you cared about it or not, and barbecue and fellowship and be a community and a family, and when that nucleus gets ripped out, obviously, as you say, and I agree, at that corporate level, it's business. So, hey, sorry about all these years that we brought you a product. We're going to take that product elsewhere because it's going to net us more profit. The irony is I just watched, Mike Williams, an amazing receiver who left and now is back in San Diego. They on YouTube, it had them touring their brand new facility. Forget it had a name for it too, up in El Segundo.
Yeah,
it's just stupid.
Off the charts.
Yeah, part of me is like, I hope that thing grows cobwebs like the Spanish. But then the other side of me is like, I'm still a Bolt fan, so I'm the emotional attachments there. Still cheer for him because it's hard for me to erase that. But I also get business at the same token. So you win the Super Bowl. Let's go through that cascade of emotions.
Yeah, man, that was crazy. That season had a special feeling to it, and there were some critical turning points. There some games and some nemesi. I don't know if that's a word. It's definitely
Enemies.
not. That definitely wasn't correct. But we couldn't beat.
That's a new one.
Oh, go Irish.
I love it.
We couldn't beat Dallas. They were too good. We always had to play them down there on the Star, and we couldn't beat them. But that year, because of the record and how well we had done, we got to get them in Green Bay. And once we won that game, it was like, okay, it's on.
Yeah.
And we had built our roster to beat them. They had that big, tall wide receiver group, so we had to draft bigger cornerbacks to be able to D up Michael Irvin and all those dudes. Like, it's a very precise science. Teams draft not just because of their general needs, but if you're a team that's on the fringe, you're going to draft players or a player or players that specifically can be a key piece to winning that game that's always been the one that's going to knock you out. And we've seen the Bills over the years try to figure out how to do that to get over Kansas City, right? They keep trying to plug and play to find the right matchup, and maybe they'll get it right, maybe they won't. My personal prediction is that Kansas City, that dynasty's over. Whether they won or lost in the Super Bowl, we know that they lost.
That's a tough dark cloud because
it's over.
3 in a row, no pressure, 3 in a row.
Nope.
And then, you throw in that little quasi, I think it's a little demonic in a certain standpoint. Maybe that's too far-fetched of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, what about football?
Yeah.
You're stealing a lot of juju.
It was good for business, but you got to keep the main thing, and I don't think they did that. And they had offensive line issues, and that negates, the superpower. It's a little bit of kryptonite for Patrick Mahomes and yada, yada, yada. But
Yeah.
anyway, that season had a special
Hey, but you heard
feeling.
it here first, especially as a Charger fan. You want to hear from an analyst and someone who played at the highest level you could play
The
at.
Kansas City Chiefs dynasty is over. It's the beginning of the end. It was a hell of a run. And Andy Reid was our tight ends coach in Green Bay. So Andy Reid was our tight ends coach. John Gruden was our wide receivers coach. Dick Duran, who just passed away, was a DB coach, who was later the Chicago Bears head coach. Steve Mariucci was our quarterbacks coach.
Was Dom Capers there still?
Nope, Dom was not there.
That was more of the Brandon Chiller and Brett Swain's era.
So we had like 4 or 5 head coaches off that staff.
That makes sense.
Doug Peterson was our backup quarterback, who just got let go by Jacksonville. I don't know where he's at now.
But that guy brought he'll never be forgotten in the football lore, especially with the crazy Philly fan base.
Philly special.
Yeah.
So, it was from an administrative standpoint. Ron Wolf's a NFL Pro Football Hall of Famer. From the front office, the coaching staff, the players, it was just unique and special. And we beat New England. We beat them by 14 points. We scored 2 kickoff returns. Punt return to kickoff return. That was the difference. But I remember at the end of that game, we were on the field, 4-minute offense, and you're just running the ball to run the clock out. And we iced the game. We got a first down and iced the game. And I remember as we're sitting there, and it was the last play, and we're all looking at each other. Favre calls it, and it's like, victory formation. It's like, holy shit.
Dude.
It's like, this is it. It's over. He snaps the ball. He takes a knee. And then everything went in slow motion. The confetti starts coming down. I start pirouetting and twirling. None of us had ever experienced what that was. We had 2 people on our roster that had even gone to a Super Bowl. One was Jim McMahon. He was the one that had won it. And Don Beebe famously went 4 times with Buffalo and didn't get it. So it was a new experience for the entire team. And it was like, that's it. There's no, hey, great job, we're one step closer, or hey, next week, da-da-da-da-da, hey, let's celebrate this for 24 hours. We're getting closer to our goals. It was it. We did it. And it was such a surreal feeling because it's the only time in my athletic career that I won at the highest of levels and you accomplished the goal. It's like winning a gold medal as an Olympian. It's like you did it. You have this dream in your head as you're laying in bed, making the great throw or block or catch and the touchdown as a kid, and having your buddy when you're having a sleepover throw the ball as you dive onto your bed to make the game-winning catch. Like the posters on our walls as kids, we have all this imagery and all these dreams and visuals of that moment, and then that moment comes and you're like, what do we do now? And it was the most present and surreal experience I think I've ever had. And interestingly, the mindset of an athlete is like, great, we were supposed to do that. That's why we're here.
Yeah, you built the roster for that.
So there's part of it that also I think in real time was diminished because we expected to do it. And it's taken me decades to get past it to fully appreciate just how unique and special it was. And each year that goes past, I have a greater appreciation of just how lucky I was to be at the right place at the right time with the right group of people.
Yeah, amen, brother. That's so cool because I think a lot of times people don't get to really, grasp that ideology of what's it really like to win the most popular game in the world on TV on that one day, out of every country, out of every viewing percentile, is the Super Bowl of American football. And to be that guy and be there is crazy. And I see the other side of it because I've worked with athletes at the highest level and even Super Bowl winners, mainly just with Brandon and Brett, which oddly enough were also Green Bay Packers 2010 Super Bowl winners. When you finally get up there and you guys are all standing getting presented the trophy, and I know a lot of that too is you just like it's all a blur at the same time, right? You're just like, okay, that was cool, but I don't know, let's do it again because now it's over.
It was funny, man. Like it is surreal. It is a blur. You're in the locker room. We all go out, kind of party that night and celebrate. I've got a famous picture of mine, not famous in my own house, where I'm holding the Lombardi Trophy on the plane ride home. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm still drunk.
Was that Super Bowl for you? It was in San Diego?
No, that was the one. We lost one in San Diego. That was New Orleans, bro.
That's right. You lost that one in SC.
So I showed my boobies to a lot of people that night. I had a lot of beads and hurricanes. And
dude, Aaron Taylor has a nice rack.
Boy, it's hairy, but it is nice. It was an incredible experience. But then, a week or two later, you're already turning the page to focus on the next season.
Yeah.
And we kind of used OTAs. They were called, mini camps back then.
Right.
We got our rings, I think, in May. And that ring ceremony was like the official, okay, this thing's over, let's turn the page. But we had already, I think, had the draft by then. We were already working out by then. Surgeries had happened. Like, you'd flip the script. And that's really, honestly, man, like if there's one thing I could go back and do differently, and I have very few regrets in my life, even all the debaucherous shit.
I hear you.
If there's one thing I could do differently, I would have enjoyed the process more.
Yeah.
I would have worked diligently through the eyes of a 52-year-old when I was 22 and had no concept about what I'm about to say, but to find more joy in the process.
Yeah.
Football for me was stress.
Yeah.
If I did well, great. I was supposed to. And if I didn't, life sucked until I did. And that binary result of expectation or disappointment was a shitty way to take advantage of an experience that's unlike any other on the planet. So when I talk to my own kids who are student athletes, it's no longer about good luck. It's have fun out there. Good luck finding the joy. Or good luck finding some joy out there today. To always emphasize and to reiterate that what you're doing is fun. Don't lose the gift of what this sport is for you in tying that to outcome and accomplishments. And that's really easy for me to say with the benefit of hindsight, but it makes it no less true for them to work as hard, to strive to be your best, to get the results that you want, but at some point, smell the roses, even if it's for 5 seconds, to enjoy the process more so that you take things with you to anchor those experiences. Because for me, when I retired, I was relieved. Thank God I no longer have to do that anymore.
Yeah,
and that makes me sad
now
now to think about how different it could have been had I managed to be able to find more joy in what I was doing.
Right. That's a great point to all you student athletes out there, and even you athletes that might listen to this that are actually playing at the pro level. Enjoy the grind, enjoy the OTAs, enjoy even the times that you're injured, because it's all part of the process that's going to make you even a better human as time grows on, whether you have children or not yet, and mentorship programs and all that stuff, which leads me into kind of our final stint. How and when and how did this work where you came up with the Joe Moore Award to honor the best unit? That a lot of times we look at the quarterbacks and the running backs and the wide receivers and the crazy defensive stars, but the trenches get forgot about. So to get the Joe Moore Award for the best unit in college football, offensive line unit in college football, how did that come about, and how'd that work?
It was interesting, man. Like, I was doing a lot of speaking in the off season around, resilience, around championship mindset, around teamwork, and would tell this one story about Coach Moore. It would always get choked up. And at the time, his sons and family were putting on an offensive line camp in Pittsburgh, which is his hometown, where they ended up. And I was always making an excuse about why I couldn't go, because Pittsburgh's not easy to get to from San Diego, and you got to take a connection, and it's right in the middle of summer, and I had a new family, and it was all these different things. But I have that on the one hand, but on the other hand, I'm like crying about all these lessons that this man taught me. And there was a disconnect there. So I threw the flag on myself. I called his son, James, and I said, James, I'm going to be at next year's camp no matter what. And in that conversation, it came up that one of his mentees, a guy that he coached in high school, is this guy Kirk Ferentz, who's the longest tenured college coach right now, who's been at Iowa for almost 30-plus years. And I said, didn't Kirk try to do a college football award for him? He's like, yeah, he did, but it was just a lot of work and time and just it never got off the ground. I was like, I have some energy around that to preserve who he was, what he taught us, resilience, toughness, teamwork, and just kind of what he stood for in those old school principles. So we hang up the phone. I go on to the website at ESPN. I look up all these different awards, and every single one's an individual award. Quarterback, running back, linebacker. And I thought, man, isn't that odd that in the consummate team sport, that every postseason award is about the individual? And that's when the light bulb went off. We need to create something for the entire unit, tackle to tackle. So that was July 7th, 2015. And on December 20th of that same year, 200-plus days later, June 7th, 200-plus days later, we wheeled into Alabama's team meeting room, the largest football or the college football trophy in history. It's 7 foot high, 6 foot wide, 3 feet deep, 800 pounds. And in the last decade, we just celebrated our 10th year. It's we've created something that matters. This award will be around as long as the game of college football exists. It's a piece of the fabric of the greatest sport on the planet. And we've done it with rubber bands and orange peels. But we've created something that means a lot to a community that we've given them something to play for. And it's been amazing.
Yeah, dude. Why are O-linemen always the smartest, too, on the team?
And
That's always
handsome. Don't forget that.
No, just the smartest.
Okay. Humble. Also very humble.
No, they are,
we're
man.
More humble
you know why? Because they all can crush an average human just with freaking George the Rabbits. You know?
You got to understand, dude, like, it is D-line, O-line, bus line. Like, if you can't make it on the offensive line, there's nothing else in this sport that you can do. So there's a humility with us. We have to work hard. And it's ironic because the offensive line is the most skilled position in football, in my opinion, because we're the least athletic. We have athleticism, but when you're blocking Aaron Donald, you better be precise in your technique because that's the only chance you have. So there's this camaraderie, there's this brotherhood. It's the only position that at the snap of every ball in play, you line up in the same position statically. All other positions on the field move, whether it's shotgun under center, whether it's a 3 technique or a 0 technique, an odd front, an even front, cornerbacks rotating, cover 2, cover 3, cover 1, cover 0. It all moves. We're static. So the game really is built around us, and it's a game of blocking and tackling. So we're unique in that we're a position that is required to combination block and work with another player to be successful. And candidly, I think it takes a different kind of cat that's willing to do that, to live in the dark and let other people get the glory, but to be part of something bigger than ourselves. I just think that there's some of us that are drawn to that and some people that aren't, and the ones that aren't go find a way to do something else, and those of us that are willing to stick around have one of the greatest experiences you can have in sports.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. I love to hear that stuff because I do believe that there's a lot of unsung heroes that we forget about in a lot of these big team sports. Baseball, let's go to the top 3, right? NBA, MLB, NFL, MLS, or anything.
You have to apologize to a long list of people you might offend.
Yeah, well, where everyone's offended, including me, but I'm first. Get in line behind me. No, but yeah. The O-line, I know from watching so many shows, are just like the unsung heroes. And also, a guy who I love, and I know that you love, that you blocked for, that said that when he came over to the Chargers, Jim Harbaugh, that the war is won in the trenches. And also from your alma mater, who I love to death, Joe Alt, a beast from Notre Dame that's now going to be coming into his second season. Did great against some of the craziest monsters. I can only imagine being a deer in the headlights your rookie season. Like, here comes the guy you always heard about. Now you got to block him.
Yeah, and Joe's going to be a tremendous player, man.
I know his family's awesome, too.
There's a long line of just Notre Dame great offensive linemen.
Oh, dude, it's
Quentin
huge.
Nelson, Mike Mulgunshi, Ronnie Stanley.
Yeah.
Zach Martin just shut it down. Like, I mean, it's
That's another thing I forgot to say.
Yeah,
they're I know at Florida State's known for D-back University.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of good.
Did you
players
say
that come
D-back or D-bag?
D-bag.
D-bag,
Yeah,
yeah.
G with a G.
Okay.
No, but and back. But I know that there's insane slew of like historical Hall of Fame
Yeah.
linemen like yourself that came out of
It's amazing.
of Notre
I
Dame.
loved Harbaugh's line, and we obviously play together. But his line about, people were griping after the draft about why they didn't go get more weapons, and he said, "We look at offensive linemen as weapons."
Yeah.
And boy, is he right. He has changed the culture of this team
mean,
to be one of physicality. And
He came in and we went to all I could say is like we were in a rebuild season, we still made the playoffs.
yeah.
I'll take that.
And I'll say this, Charger fans, I'm on record as saying Kansas City's dynasty's over. It's the beginning of the end. You got a 4 to 5 year window with Jim Harbaugh leading this team. You guys are going to be physical. You're going to compete. You've got the quarterback to do it. Something happens for a lot of coaches, but particularly there, that after that 4th and 5th year, it starts to become the law of diminishing returns. That's not all on Jim, but that's kind of been the track record. But buckle up and buckle your chin strap, because these next 4 or 5 years are going to be some of the funnest in Chargers history.
Wow, man, that says a lot, especially for those of us that are still fans, and from a guy that's not only played with the Bolts but sees football in a whole different light than your average fan and human does. Aaron, we thank you for your time, brother. You're awesome. You took time out of your day. I know you're a busy guy. I love you to death, and I can look in your eyes and tell you that, even though we've barely even known each other for maybe a couple months. Coming on Pros and Cons, laying it down. And you said this to me when you were getting worked on in the PT room with Kate, and I'm going to say it back to you. If you had a bullhorn on your deathbed with one last sentence to tell everybody, what's it gonna be?
Step into the fear, and that's where the gold lies.
Woo! And you know what I said when he said it to me? I said, love hard and play harder. You guys, thanks for tuning in. Zach, what episode is this, do you think? 9? 8? Hold on, dude.
The latest
Hold on. We're going to
episode.
keep this in the episode just to – hold on. Hold on, everybody. We've had enough. Let's get this count right real quick. So
This is what happens to me when I'm trying to look up my anniversary. I'm like, wait a minute. Oh, damn. Was that what?
So, yeah, you're right, because, no, this episode 7 was Freeman, and then we had Anthony Autry was 7, 8, so this is 9. So there you guys go.
Boom.
Episode 9. Big Aaron Taylor. God bless you and God bless America. Yee!
Boom.